So let's start. Thank you very much for joining us, for coming tonight. Basically, I think the way that we'll do this is I'll start off by giving the talk about cleaning made simple. We're going to try and make everything as easy as possible. I'm going to keep my chat thing open. So if anyone has any questions in terms of clarification of something said in the middle, then please feel free to type a message either to me, to everyone that I can see, and then I will try and clarify if there's anyone who needs clarification. And then what we'll do afterwards is we'll have some time for questions. Okay, so if you do have any questions in the middle or anything that I haven't addressed, then I will address it at the end. Happy to take questions at the end. Okay. Can everyone hear me okay? Can I see some waves if you can hear me okay? Thumbs, waves, yeah? Okay, fine, brilliant. Thank you very much. So the great Rabbi Yitzchak of Berdichev was one of the early Hasidic masters. And he was the person who really dedicated his life. He was called Sanigaron Shel Yisrael, which means the defender of the Jewish people. And he spoke always amazing the Jewish people were. That was really his life's mission. So one of the classic stories they tell about Rabbi Yitzchak, it was on Erev Pesach. It was literally the afternoon before the Seder night, and he was walking around the town of Berdichev, and he goes up to the local smugglers and he asks them for some tobacco. So they say, of course, you know, as long as you'll pay us, hand over the money. He hands over the money, he gets some tobacco. And then he goes up to them and he asks them for some schnapps, and he goes and he gets some schnapps from the smugglers down the road. And by the time he's got down to the end of the road, he's bought from the black market anything, all of the contraband and all of the illegal things that the Russian government have forbidden him to buy on pain of going to prison. He then goes up to some more of these smugglers at the black market and he says to them, can I have some bread? And they say, Rabbi, today, it's Seder night tonight. We don't have any bread here. And he says, goes up to the next one and he says, can I have some whiskey? And they say, Rabbi, whiskey? Seder night, you can't have any whiskey. We don't sell whiskey now. And he looks up to Hashem and he says, Hashem, look at your children. The communist Tsars of Russia hidden them to sell all of these products on pain of going to prison or going to Siberia or worse. And yet, all of these things you can get. 3,000 you told them not to eat chametz on Pesach, and to this day, with no prison, no fines, no one persecuting them about it, you can't get from chametz. How amazing are the Jewish people, he says. And I thought that was very appropriate for our time, where the world has sort of been turned on its head. Many of us are uncertain, you know, of our own personal futures and what will be. But here we are listening, having a share about how to make Pesach. Because as people, it's important that we make sure that our homes are chametz free, that we clean for Pesach, and we make sure that we have a Seder night and we have a Yom Tov and a Pesach that is a proper Pesach. I think that's the greatest accolade at the moment for the Jewish people, that we are still making Pesach with all of this that's going on. He points out something very beautiful, that the name that we give for the festival is Pesach, whereas in the Torah, the name that's given for this festival is a different name. The Torah's name for Pesach is actually Chag HaMatzos. Chag HaMatzos means literally the festival of Matzos. And he asks, why is it that we festival the name of Pesach, that's what we refer to it as, whereas in the Torah it's referred to by a different name of Chag HaMatzos, the festival of Matzos. And he says something very beautiful. He says that Pesach means passed over, which is referring to when Hashem protected the Jewish people with everything else that's going on in Egypt, with all the 10 plagues, the plague of the firstborn. Hashem passes over, jumps over the houses of the Jewish people, so to speak, protects us, the Jewish people. So therefore, we call the Yom Tov, the name to the Yom Tov refers to what Hashem did for us. But when the Torah writes the name of the Yom Tov, then it calls it Chag HaMatzos. Chag HaMatzos, the festival of matzos. The Jewish people ran out of Egypt so quickly that we didn't even have time to bake bread. When Hashem said it was time to leave, and we left, we ran out, we followed Hashem without hesitation. So therefore, when the Torah, when Hashem, God gives the festival the name, then he gives the festival about what we did for him. I thought it was a very beautiful idea that we look at what Hashem does for us, and we have to know that in the same way we look at what Hashem does for us and we appreciate everything Hashem does, Hashem looks at what we do for him, Hashem calls the festival Chag HaMatzos, the festival of matzos, because Hashem appreciates everything that we do for him, just like appreciate what he does for us. So let's try and think of every single minute that we spend on Pesach cleaning, on preparing ourselves and getting ready to all of that. Hashem is looking down at us and looking at how wonderful it is what we are doing for him. Let that be our attitude whilst we're doing our Pesach cleaning this year. So one of the great sages who died 10, 15 years ago, I believe, Chaim Pinchas Steinberg was his name. He wrote a very short guide to cleaning your house for Pesach. And it was very interesting because the heading of the guide that he wrote was Clean for Pesach and Enjoy the Seder. Clean for Pesach and enjoy the Seder. And he wrote that the idea of the guide that he gave for Pesach cleaning was that nobody should come to the Seder night and feel completely finished and exhausted, like they cannot enjoy it at all. The idea of Pesach cleaning is not that it should be something that completely wipes us out. On the contrary, it's actually the most important thing is that we get to Yom Tov, we have a Simchas Yom Tov, we enjoy the Yom Tov, we can fulfill all the mitzvahs of Seder night, we can talk about the story, and we can fulfill the mitzvah of the Haggadah and eating all the food on Seder night. So we have to be able to get to Seder night in a position that we're able to do that. Not only that, the attitude that we have towards doing a mitzvah. In fact, Rav Zimmerman, my Rabbi, he said, any mitzvah that we do, when we start feeling resentful afterwards, if we end up after we've done the mitzvah feeling resentful about it, then what we were doing wasn't a mitzvah. Mitzvahs give us satisfaction. There's a satisfaction, there's a simcha. Sometimes they're challenging. Yes, we've got to put effort into them, but after fulfilling that mitzvah, then we should feel a sense of satisfaction. So if we're getting to the Seder night or we're doing our Pesach cleaning and we're feeling resentful, then something is right. Then we have to think again, maybe we're doing too much, maybe we're doing things which aren't necessary, but we should be feeling a sense of satisfaction. Yes, we're putting in a lot of effort. True, it does take effort, it takes time, but we should feel that sense of satisfaction. Now, the difficulty I think that a lot of us face when doing the Pesach cleaning is usually we're often called to choose between good and bad, right? There's normally sort of a binary choice. You know, there's something which is right and there's something which is wrong. When it comes to Pesach, then very often we feel we're choosing between good and good. We've got some things that we've always done every year, although we've always seen every year, which seem to be very, very good things to do. But on the other hand, we've got other things, other priorities. And I think especially this year, where all of us have got a lot more things going on in our lives than usual, to put it mildly. Many of us have got children at home to be dealing with as well, which complicate things. They're trying to work from home, and with the addition that to get out of the house, if we're still allowed to go out of the house, I haven't been out much in the last 2 weeks myself, we've been in quarantine, but if those of us who are still allowed and blessed to go shopping, that's also become quite a difficult task. So therefore, I think this year more than ever, it's important to know what we're actually obligated to do and what is an extra. If there are extras that we'd like to do in previous years, then we can weigh up for ourselves. Do I have the time? Do I have the effort? Do I have the energy? Do my children need me instead this year? All of those things are calculations that we should be able to make ourselves as individuals. However, what I'd like to do is at least to inform people what it is the basics. What am I obligated to do? If people want to do more, they want to go extra, do beyond, then that's fine. But what I would say though is this year, let's try and get it right. Let's try and do what we are supposed to do, what the minimum is that we're obligated to do. And then once we get there, we've done that. If we're still smiling, happy, like I said, feeling a sense of satisfaction, not resent, then we can start think about doing some of the extras that we might have done in the normal year. Okay, with cleaning. So the first thing is that the cleaning that we do for Pesach is cleaning with a purpose. Cleaning with a purpose means that it is not spring cleaning, and the purpose is that we are very simply cleaning our houses to make sure there is no chametz in our houses. Now, what does chametz mean? How much chametz and what type of chametz are we looking for? The first thing is we are not looking for crumbs. The Gemara already speaks about crumbs and chametz. The Gemara says that crumbs are batel, which means that crumbs are completely insignificant. So any of those small things which look like dirt that you might find on the floor or in the corner or in the back of a cupboard, etc., that sort of thing. Those things, those crumbs, whatever they might be, they're normally not even identifiable as chametz or not. Those are not what we're looking for. Now, we'll get to the kitchen in a minute. In the kitchen, there is going to be slight differences between the kitchen and the rest of the house. But for the moment, let's discuss the rest of the house. So the rest of the house, those crumbs don't make a difference. What is a piece of chametz that we are actually looking for? And the answer is something which is actually food. So primarily that means, and this is the Shulchan Aruch states, Tov Mem Beis, Simon Tov Mem Beis 442, we're looking for food which is the size of a kazayas. If you can picture a small matchbox, the size of a small matchbox, that type of chametz is what the Shulchan Aruch says that's the main thing that we're looking for. Mishnah Berurah says if you have something which is smaller than that size, smaller than the size of a matchbox, then it depends if it's edible. If it is something which is still edible, so for example, you might have pretzels and you might have bizili, croutons, possibly Cheerios, those sort of things which are still identifiable as food, then those we should also get rid of. But if you have things which are smaller than that, or alternatively, you have things which are small in size and they're already a bit dirty, they're a bit horrible, you're never going to want to eat them, then there's no concern that you'll come to eat them, which is the reason why we want to make sure to clear all of those pieces of chametz out of our house. And therefore, in that case, if they are very small, they're a little bit dirty, then again, you don't have to worry about them. The crumbs, which are not identifiable as chametz, are definitely not a problem in the whole house. We'll speak about the kitchen. And small pieces of chametz that you would never come to eat are also not a problem. Therefore, if you spray some cleaning fluid or whatever it is, those sort of things already make things something which is not fit to eat, and therefore you wouldn't worry about cleaning them out. What we're looking for is real chametz, which means larger pieces of actual food, things which are identifiable as food and potentially that would actually eat. Where are you likely to find those sort of things? So if you've got children, then in their school bags is a great place to find things. Every enjoy opening up their school bags and finding pretzels and various other snacks and sandwiches that have been sitting there for weeks, if not months. So those are a good place. Obviously, lots of places in the kitchen, especially fridge and freezer, where it's very easy to forget about things. So make sure just to go through the fridge and freezer very well. Sometimes there'll be something in the bottom corner that you left for later on or for a rainy day, and that could be actually real chametz in there. Another place, which is an interesting one, you can miss, is a vacuum cleaner bag. So if you've got a Hoover and you've got the bag of the vacuum cleaner, nowadays a lot of them are bagless, but the plastic compartment where the food goes, you can actually have a lot of chametz if you've hoovered up a lot of pretzels or other things with your vacuum cleaner. So make sure to empty that before Pesach comes in, on the morning of Erev Pesach at the latest, before the time comes when we're not allowed to own any chametz. If you've got children, then children do go to unexpected places. So you do, depending on how firm you are with your kids during the year, they could have taken chametz up to their bed. You might find chametz in their drawers and that sort of thing. So depending on how your house is run, make sure to check those sort of places. It shouldn't take long at all to check those sort of things. So for example, a drawer would literally, all that needs to be done with a drawer in your children's room, if you are concerned that if you're not concerned they took chametz up, there is no need to check it at all. If you're concerned they took chametz up, take everything out the drawer or just have a look in the drawer. You'll be able to see straight away the piece of food. And again, we're not looking for little crumbs or pieces of dirt. We're looking for actual food. You'll be able to see very, very quickly if there is any food in those drawers. There is, then remove it. So in terms of the food in the vacuum cleaner, whether it's edible, Stephen asked. So it depends. It depends what else is in the vacuum cleaner, really, is the answer. But it is definitely, potentially, it is still considered to be edible. And remember, if there is a lot of it, meaning more than a kazayas, a bit more than the size of a small matchbox, then we definitely would have to be concerned. So depending on how much you hoovered it up, that's definitely potentially a place where you could find a lot more of chametz. Things like books and toys, all of those things, then they only need checking if you think there might be chametz in them. So children's toys, which are in like boxes, etc., and that sort of thing, it could be that there is some chametz in the boxes. Again, you can just be using those toys over Pesach. That is one solution is just to put those toys away with the things that you're selling. But if you'd like to use them over Pesach, just empty the box. You'll be able to see very quickly if there's any real chametz in them. You do not need to scrub and clean the toys or give the toys a bath or anything else like that. It doesn't matter if they're still dusty, if they're still a little dirty, that's fine. You can do that any time of the year that you like. What you're looking for in Pesach is real chametz. Books do not have real chametz in them. You do not have to clean your books unless you genuinely think that it's likely that you've put pretzels or Bisley or Cheerios between the pages of your book, because after you're eating it over breakfast maybe. But generally speaking, you do not have to check books. You don't have to worry about them. Now, with some of those things, you don't want to bring them to the table. So, if, for example, if you've got books that you would normally bring to your Shabbos table, then it's good practice not to bring them to the table where you're going to be eating on Pesach, because just in case if there is something, then you wouldn't want that to be on the table where you're actually eating. The same with children's toys. You probably normally wouldn't bring them to the table anyway. But if there is a possibility that there is still any chametz on the toys, so make sure not to bring those toys to your Yom Tov table. Things like tablecloths and dishcloths that have been washed can be used for Pesach. Okay, so if you've got a tablecloth, I've had a lot of people asking me questions who have not made Pesach before, and they're making Pesach either for the first time or they're hoping the next year they'll be able to go to their parents again and are making Pesach for the only time. You don't have to go out and buy new dishcloths, new tablecloths, etc. Just wash them in a washing machine with detergent. Absolutely fine to use those on Pesach. A question here that I'm getting is about Play-Doh. Play-Doh, in terms of the kids playing with it, it's made of flour. Play-Doh, nevertheless, even though it's made of flour, according to a lot of the poskim, is not chametz because it's changed something which is a toy. Sometimes they say that the Play-Doh, they specifically write on it, it's edible, and it's made to be edible. But generally speaking, Play-Doh is something which is just seen as a toy, and therefore is not something which is a problem. If you would like to, then put it away with a chametz and sell it. If you want to sort of go above the letter of the law, then you could do that. Matzah from last year's Pesach venture is not chametz. As long as it's, matzah from Pesach, matzah that is sold around in shops is chametz. But matzah which is sold for Pesach, even if it's been there for a year, you might not want to eat it, but it's not chametz. Well, what about moving large appliances, large items? Do I need to move my fridge, my washing machine, and various other things that I never move, generally speaking, in the house? The Gemara discusses a case where there was some chametz and a wall fell on it. So you've got all these bricks that have fallen on top of this chametz, and the question is whether you would have to move. It discusses a case where potentially a dog or other animal would go and take that chametz and sort of drag it out from underneath the pile on Pesach, underneath the rubble on Pesach. And the Gemara says if that is the case, if that is possibly going to happen, then you would need to make sure that there is no chametz underneath the pile. Therefore, what this means is you only need to clean places that will be revealed within your normal daily activity. So therefore, those things, those appliances in your house that you do not normally move, like your fridge and your freezer, I imagine, your washing machine, your dryer, heavy things. I would include beds usually, depending. Sometimes people do move them regularly, so it depends. But those things which you do not normally move, do not need to check behind them. You do not need to check behind them. Now, you might ask me, what if there is actually chametz behind them? Did I do something wrong? What if I move them up? Did I do something wrong? The answer is no, you didn't do anything wrong at all, because that's why we do something called bittul. Bittul is the declaration that we make before Pesach comes in. Any chametz that I may have at all is null and void. We only have to check and we have to clean those places where we will be using over Pesach. Those where they'll be revealed in our normal daily activities, those are the places we have to check, because if there is some chametz there, we might come to eat it, or we might intention that we actually like this chametz, we don't want to declare it's ownerless, but that chametz which we're not going to reveal, it's sitting behind the fridge, under the fridge, etc., you don't have to move that for Pesach. Can one rely on a cleaner is a question which is often asked. If I've got a non-Jewish cleaner and I've asked my cleaner, I know that it's becoming now harder and harder to actually have a cleaner, so maybe less relevant for this year. And the answer is yes, you can rely on your cleaner. If you've asked your cleaner to clean a certain place, now I would say that when it comes to the kitchen, that should be something that definitely you should take charge of and supervise at the very least. But generally speaking, a cleaner is acceptable in terms of halacha. So if they've cleaned the room, you've told them what they're looking for, and they have said that they have cleaned the room, then you would be able to rely on the fact that they have cleaned the room. By the way, it should be clear to everyone that there is, in addition to cleaning, there is still a mitzvah called bedikas chametz, which means the checking for chametz. When we go around our house on the night before Seder night, we go around our house and we check the chametz. So, for example, if your cleaner has cleaned in all of the bedrooms, then make sure that you go around and you check the night of bedikas chametz, the night before Seder night. You go around and you'll be just checking, giving everything a quick once over to make sure that it has been cleaned properly. But it is perfectly acceptable to rely on a cleaner who has cleaned. Now, that is with regards to the rest of the house. With regard to the kitchen, so here we are a little more concerned about crumbs. They actually say, Rav Zimmerman told me that Rav Moshe Feinstein, who was a great halachic decider, one of the people I would have loved to have met, but I never had the privilege. When I was in America just now, though, I did go to meet his son. His son is Rav David Feinstein, who has taken over sort of his father's yeshiva on the Lower East Side. There's not many Jewish people living there now, but he's still got this yeshiva is there. And I went and I saw the table, the desk that Rav Moshe Feinstein used to sit at and teach at. So Rav Moshe Feinstein used to say that his wife didn't allow him to do any Pesach cleaning. I guess that's how it worked in those days. His wife didn't allow him to do any Pesach cleaning, but he said if he was allowed to be in charge of it, then it would have taken him 3 hours to do his apartment. Apparently he had, I mean, it was a flat, not a house, but nevertheless quite a well-appointed apartment. He said it would have taken him 3 hours to do the whole thing. And out of those 3 hours, he would have spent 2 hours and 15 minutes on the kitchen, 45 minutes on the rest of the house, 2 hours and 15 minutes on the kitchen. So just to give you an indicator, the kitchen is really the most important part of the house in terms of making sure that it's chametz free. Reason for that is that whereas in all other places in the house, if there are crumbs, like we said, they're not identifiable as chametz, you're not going to come to eat those crumbs, then they are not a problem. However, in the kitchen, if those crumbs get into our food, either when the food is being prepared or when the food is being served, etc., normally tables are eaten are much, they're very easy to clean and put a new tablecloth on. But in the kitchen, then we would have to be concerned if any of those crumbs get into our food, then we wouldn't want to, even the tiniest amount of chametz is something which we're not allowed to eat. So therefore, when we come to the kitchen, we should take more care in terms of there are no crumbs or any small amounts of chametz left. Now, once again, once you've hoovered something, then that's done, that's taken care of. You don't have to worry anymore. Once you've taken a rag, some cleaner, some regular sort of surface cleaner, you've taken a rag, you've cleaned inside a cupboard, then you don't have to worry about it anymore. Even if there was any chametz at all, then it was spoiled. There is a custom, there is a minhag, which is to put down some sort of covering on surfaces that you're going to be using to put food on Pesach. Surfaces that you will put food on Pesach, there's a custom to cover them. This custom only applies to those surfaces you'll actually be putting food directly on. So, therefore, fridges and freezers, most people only put food on their fridge and freezer when it's in a container. Normally, you're not going to be putting food directly on any of the shelves in your fridge and your freezer, and therefore you wouldn't need to cover the shelves as well. Some people do. If you'd like to, then you can, no problem. But you don't need to. And similarly with the cupboards in the kitchen as well, depending on what you're putting in those cupboards, you don't have to cover the shelves unless you're putting food directly there. Again, some people like to cover all of their shelves, even if the places are places where they're putting pots and pans. If you'd like to, that's fine. But you don't need to unless you're actually putting food down on the surfaces. I'm going to do a quick run through of the kitchen. And what I'm going to try and cover as well, I've been asked by a number of people have specific utensils, appliances, and that sort of thing for Pesach. So we're going to try and cover what are the regular appliances I can use for Pesach, even though I've been using them for chametz during the year. Just one question here on the side. If you never eat in your car, do you need to clean and check for chametz? The answer is no. If you never eat in your car, then that would be a place that you don't take chametz, and therefore you do not have to clean at all. You don't have to worry about there being chametz anywhere. Packaged food on shelves, as long as it's spinach, then it would not need shelving paper. Again, a lot of people do cover all of their shelves, and that's fine. But no, if you're not putting food directly on a shelf, etc., then it does not need to be covered. Of course, you know, it should be cleaned. Everything should be cleaned in the kitchen, but it does not need to be covered as well. So, in terms of kashering and in terms of the kitchen, so the first thing is we spoke about cupboards, etc., cleaning and covering when necessary. The other thing is dishes. So the regular plates and dishes and cups and everything that we use during the year cannot be used for Pesach. Even if they are completely clean, they have absorbed taste. One of the concepts which is very important in Halacha in Kashrut is anytime something is used with hot food, then taste becomes absorbed into that container. So therefore, all of our dishes and plates and everything cannot be for Pesach if they have been used during the year for chametz, or alternatively, if they've at least been washed up with chametz. Remember, dishwasher, which is hot, whether it's in the sink, which is hot. So therefore, what I would recommend, if you're at home for Pesach and it's the first time that you're at home, or the only time you're hoping that next year you'll be able to go away again, and you're just making Pesach as a one-off, or you're by yourself and you're making Pesach as a one-off, then I would say buy disposable. Buy everything disposable. You can even get pots and pans which are disposable as well. Alternatively, you could buy a set of pots and pans, small pots and pans. But in terms of your plate, bowls, and your cups and everything like that, then I would say the best thing is, the easiest thing is to use disposables. Or alternatively, you could buy a set that you use it this year on Pesach, and then afterwards you can use it during the year as well. There's no problem to change something from Pesach to chametz. It's possible to kasher things. If a person does want to kasher things, it is possible to kasher many different pots and pans, things of metal. Generally speaking, not ceramics, not china and that sort of thing. If anyone does want to, I can do a quick run through of how to do that later on. I'm not going to do that now because I don't think there'll be that many people doing it, but you can ask the question later on. Now, what do we do about the rest of our kitchen, in terms of kashering the rest of our kitchen so that we can use it on Pesach? So the first thing is countertops. Countertops, the issue with them is that we put hot down on them. And therefore, once again, even if the countertop is completely clean, which would obviously be the first step to make sure that it's completely clean, and I would include also the sides as well, the splashback there on the side of the wall, the underneath of the cupboards, if you've got overhanging cupboards, all those sort of areas, just to make sure they're completely clean. And then, in terms of the countertop, ideally the best thing to do with the countertop is to cover the countertop. Ideally, the best is to cover the countertop. There are all sorts of you can cover it with anything that you'd like. If it's something which you're worried is going to tear, then you could do two different layers. Alternatively, you could kasher it with boiling water by pouring boiling water on it. Take a kettle. Be very careful that you don't burn yourself, and obviously that they're around at all. But when it's completely dry, once the countertop is dry, then you can pour boiling water over it with your kettle, and then make sure to cover it. Like still, some people do both. You don't need to do both. Some people do both. So therefore, the best thing to do is just to cover it, and then you don't need to do it as well. Or alternatively, if you do want to use it and it's not practical to cover it, then you can kasher it with boiling water. If none of these are practical, neither of these are practical, then what you can do is, theoretically, every time you put something hot down, not to put it directly on your countertop. So again, you clean your countertop, and then you have like a special mat that you've got for Pesach, Should be something which is heat proof, matte, and you can put that down on your countertop. And every single time that you put a hot pot or something hot on your countertop, make sure you only put it where it is covered. And that's not necessarily the easiest way of doing it during Pesach, but if the koshering with the boiling water or cover is not practical, then that would be another just practical solution as a one-off, especially for this year for Pesach. So you just literally make sure to cover every time the something hot on the countertop, then you put it down on top of something else. In terms of the sink, so some sinks you can made from stainless steel, then you can kosher them. You should first pour some bleach or something down the plug hole. Before that, make sure that it hasn't hot for 24 hours, like with all koshering, and that applies to koshering countertop as well. Make sure it hasn't been used for something hot for 24 hours. And then with the sink, you pour a little bit of bleach down the plug hole, and then after that, you take the kettle, you boil the kettle, and then you pour in circles, sort of concentric circles, from the middle all the way up around the sink, which is stainless steel, and then that will kosher it. In terms of the tap, if you're concerned that maybe some chametz touch the tap, turn the tap on hot, and once the tap is running, hot water is coming out of it, then pour some more hot water from your kettle onto the tap. If your sink is made from ceramic, then you cannot kosher it. So therefore, rather, if you're going to wash up in hot water, then you should use an insert, meaning you should buy a bowl and you should wash in that bowl. We spoke about fridges and freezers and that sort of thing already. Urns and hot plates. Those who have made Pesach before will have a Pesach urn and a Pesach hot plate, which is great. A lot of people have asked me this year they don't have one. Do they need to go out one? So the answer is, if you can, then you should, and that's wonderful and great. Then you'll have it. Maybe you'll make Pesach again. You don't need to go and buy one. The hot plate can be cleaned and very simply clean it and cover it with silver foil. As far as I know, you shouldn't sort of wrap the silver foil all the way around it, because it can, there are vents there which need to be, the air needs to be able to get out of it. But you can definitely cover the top of the hot plate. Maybe use two layers of silver foil just in case one of them. That's in terms of the hot plate. In terms of the urn, if the urn has not been used for chametz at all, then there is no problem. It's just been used for hot water, then no problem at all. Some people use their urns for heating things up. They use the urns to heat up the challah sometimes. So the challah might have been placed on the urn and that sort of thing. If the challah has only been placed on the lid, then what you should do is cover the lid, preferably with 2 layers. Again, 2 layers of silver foil, if possible, and cover the lid, and then you can use the urn. If you've got a Pesach urn, then that is preferable, especially if you've used your other urn for chametz. But if you don't, you need to use the urn, then you can cover the lid and then use that lid only whilst it is covered. In terms of a kettle, someone asked about you can use, in terms of koshering, you can use, if that was the question, in terms of koshering, you can use either kettle, whether it's your chametz stick one or your Pesach kettle. Most kettles not going to be chametz at all, because you haven't used them at all for chametz. Most people, unless you sort of cook pasta, sometimes put it in your kettle to cook it. Most people don't do that, and therefore the kettle, although again, if you've got a Pesach kettle, that's the best practice, and you would normally do that. You would normally have another kettle for Pesach just in case, but nevertheless, definitely, if you don't have one, you're making Pesach for the first time, unless you know for a fact that you have done something chametz with your kettle, then there wouldn't be a problem. You can use the same kettle. What do we do about ovens and stovetops? So ovens, some people have a Pesach oven, Pesach kitchen. That's wonderful, absolutely great. Most people do not, and they want to use, and they will be using the same oven. So what should you do in terms of your cleaning and koshering your oven? Make sure you clean your oven very well. Use a good oven cleaner. You do not have to get a professional to do it. I know some people do, and you can do if you would like to. If you don't want to clean it, that's fine, but you don't have to. There's no special obligation to sort of pay a professional to clean your oven. You can do it by yourself as well. Use a good oven cleaner. The oven cleaner in any places, if you've got a fan, any places which are not accessible, then just spray a little bit of oven cleaner into there. After you've cleaned the oven, don't worry, by the way, on every oven there are always going to be stains. Even after you've cleaned it well, there are always going to be some of those stains that you can't get out. It's not a problem. Don't worry about it. Don't sort of be mad with the steel wool. As long as there's nothing, again, which is identifiable as food, a bit of staining on the metal is not a problem at all. So once you've cleaned it well, then what you do is you turn the oven up to the highest temperature. It'll probably take about an hour or so to make sure that it's fully heated. And once you've turned it up to that high temperature, then that of how to kasher your stovetop. If you've got a gas stovetop, the best thing is if you can do either you've got a large pot or a blech, the old-fashioned blech, which is sort of a big metal plate, and you can put that on top of the grates and turn the gas on. And what that does is that heats them up till they're very hot, and that kasher the grates. If you don't have one of those, then it's fine. Just turn on the gas to the highest temperature for about 10 minutes or so, and then that will kasher your grates. If you don't have gas, if you've got an induction hob or you've got an electric hob, then just clean it, turn it on to its highest setting for 10 minutes, for about 10 minutes, and then that will kasher it. Some people have suggested pouring boiling water in addition to that on your stovetop. I would say be very careful if you are going to do that you don't break it, especially with the electric and the induction ones. They're not designed, normally they're not designed to have water poured onto them. If you are confident and you think you can do that, then that's great, and do that as well. But besides for that, you don't need to do that, and it would be absolutely fine just to turn it on to the highest temperature. Again, making sure it's completely clean, turn it on to the highest temperature for 10 minutes or so. The other appliances in the kitchen, such as microwaves and dishwashers, are not recommended to use on Pesach. So if you've used them for chametz, your microwave and your dishwasher, they're not recommended to use on Pesach. They are very difficult to kasher, and therefore it is recommended not to use them, even though I know it's a little bit difficult. Things like mixers, blenders, and that sort of thing. Anything which has been actually used for chametz, any of these things which have been used for chametz. So, a mixer that you've made your dough in, for example, that definitely should not be used for Pesach. If it is something which has just been used for, like a blender, which has just been used for blending mixtures with fruit and other things in them, but not for actual chametz, then the issue is that it's been washed up with chametz. The issue is that it's been washed up with hot chametz. Again, assuming it has been, that you put it in the dishwasher, or even washed up in the sink with hot water, together with other chametz utensils. Therefore, with those sort of things, they potentially can be kashered. I would advise, unless you really need it, unless it's something that is a real necessity, I would advise not to kasher them, because they're usually made from plastic. If they're made from metal, then you can. If they're made from metal, then you can definitely kasher. Again, if they haven't been used to actually sort of blend or mix dough, actual chametz, then you can definitely kasher them if they're made from metal. If they are made from plastic, then only in a real case of a necessity. So some people need it either for health reasons or for dietary reasons or that sort of thing. So in that case, then it would be okay to kasher it. I can explain to you how to do that with Hagala. If anyone wants to, I can explain how to do that at the end. That is essentially, that covers all of the utensils in the kitchen. Let me just check if I've covered all the questions here on the chat. Do you have to tape over your microwave or move it with the chametz? So the answer is yes, one of those two things should be done. Same thing if you're not using your oven or part of your oven, microwave, that sort of thing. There should be some sort of reminder to make sure that you don't use it by accident on Pesach. So therefore, you should, at the very least, tape it over sign so that before you come to open it and put something in it on Pesach, you'll be reminded that it's actually chametz. A combination microwave or oven which can be heated to self-clean heat above 300 degrees. Can this be used as a microwave as well as an oven after kashering? So the answer for that is yes, as long as it's completely, obviously completely clean, and then you are, if you're able to heat it up to that sort of temperature, again, you would do similar to an oven. Treat it like an oven in terms of kashering. Make sure it's clean. Turn it up to the highest temperature. As long as it takes to get there, normally an hour is more than enough. And then in that case, you would be able to use it as a microwave as well. Should a stainless steel sink be covered with foil? The answer is not if it is kashered. So a stainless steel sink is, like we said, it's easy to kasher by pouring boiling water on it. And then once it's been kashered, then there's no need to cover it. And to kasher it, should use a chametz or Pesach kettle. It doesn't make a difference. You can use either one. You can use either one to kasher it. Okay, are there any other questions? Let me just take everyone. I'll tell you what, if you'd like to ask a question, then please take yourself off mute. You should be able to do that at the bottom of your screen if you'd like to ask a question.
I have a baby high chair, and do I have to cover it? Because he'll just pull it up, pull the cover off. What should I do with the baby high chair?
Okay, yeah, good question. So I would say the baby high chair, normally you're not going to be putting anything on there which is hot. So therefore, you don't have to be worried, even though you may have washed it up and set that sort of thing. You're going to be using it just for cold over Pesach. So make sure that it's completely clean, although normally you would make sure to cover surfaces that you're putting food on. If it's, like in this case, not practical to cover it, as long as it's completely clean, the food that you're putting on it is not hot. And when I say hot, I mean above sort of 45 degrees. Type of food, what it's called yad lettuce, where you would recoil at the heat if you put your hand in it. Anyway, you won't be serving your baby something on his high chair, which is that heat. So therefore, okay, as long as it's completely clean, you can use it as normal.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
We have a hostess trolley, which is a number of hot plates together. But it only goes up to 80 degrees. So the question is, can we cover it and use it, or not use it?
Yeah, that would be the same as the hot plate. So you can cover the surface we're going to be putting the pots on, and then you can use it as, make sure it's clean, obviously, before that, make sure it's thoroughly clean, and then cover it, and then you can use it covered.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Hi, Mum.
Hi. An induction hob. It's not for me, but if you've got an induction hob, once you've kashered it, can you cover it with anything? Because I don't know anything about induction hobs.
As far as I know, and someone else can correct me, but as far as my technical knowledge goes, if you cover it, then one of two things will happen. Either it will be a material which conducts, in which case it will stay on all the time and it will damage it, or it just won't work. So I don't think it's practical to cover it at all. And you don't need to cover it. Once you've kashered it by leaving it on for 10 minutes, which I think you'll have a pot on it in order to activate it, I believe. You can't just turn it on without a pot. So once you've done that, you've heated it up for 10 minutes, then just use it as...
Okay, thank you.
Rabbi, can I ask about that induction hob?
Yeah.
If you have to put a pot on it to heat it up, is that a Pesach pot or a Chometz pot? To kasher?
The answer is it can be either one as long as they're completely clean.
Okay, thank
As long
you.
as they're completely clean, obviously including the bottom of it as well, then it could be either one.
Hi, Rabbi. Can you hear me? Can you hear me,
Yeah,
Rabbi?
I can hear you, Robert.
Okay, so my question is cutting boards. If you use a cutting board just for fruit and vegetables all year round, is it okay to still use that cutting board for Pesach?
Okay, so good question. So the fact that it's fruit and vegetables is obviously not a problem. It may have been washed up, potentially. It may have been washed up, again, with hot water.
It would have been washed in a dishwasher.
Pardon?
It would have been washed in a dishwasher.
Right, so if it's been washed up in the dishwasher, then because of the washing up in the dishwasher, then it would have absorbed sort of chametz taste. If there is no alternative at all, then you could use it cold. You could use it cold. Make sure not to wash it up with hot. Don't wash it up on Pesach with anything hot, and only use it to cut cold fruits and vegetables if there's no alternative. But otherwise, it would definitely be preferable to get another cutting board because like I said, it's been washed up in the dishwasher with other chametz.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I've got here on the side. One question here: is there no way to kasher a microwave? The answer is that there is a way to kasher a microwave during the year. So, microwaves can be kashered. The way that they absorb heat is through steam. There's a lot of steam. If you ever open a microwave, a lot of steam, and that's the way that they absorb taste. And therefore, during the year, for example, between meat and milk, if, by accident, with your microwave, which is a milchik microwave, have something meaty in it, then it can be kasher during the year. However, for Pesach, it is not recommended to do because the method of kashering it is not foolproof, because there are a number of areas in the microwave which are hard to access, and therefore it's not recommended to do the kashering Pesach. The rest of the year, even with milk and meat, it is definitely more lenient. The kashrus rules are more lenient than they are on Pesach. Another question I've got here: worry about chametz the kids might have taken into the garage, or chametz that is in the outside bins waiting to be collected. Good question. So in terms of the garden, taken into the garden, the answer is no, because in terms of the garden, anything which was there, we assume would have been taken by say birds or whatever it is. Obviously, if you actually can see something, a loaf of bread or a roll or something sitting there in your garden, then move it, distribute it. You don't have to start searching your garden at all, because the kids might have sort of taken Cheerios down. It actually just reminded me that my daughter, I hope Cheerios from the tree for the birds to take about a month ago, and I think they're still there. So I might have to take those Cheerios down now. The chametz that's in the outside bins when collected, that preferably you should get rid of before Pesach, meaning the time when we're not allowed to own Pesach, on the morning of Pesach, preferably you should only chametz in your outside bins as well. Now, if it's something which is, again, not fit to eat at all, then it's not a problem. But often there can be things which are still actually would be sort of edible and fit to eat. That's why they do special bin collections before Pesach. In Barnet, at least, little bin collections before Pesach. We sent out the details in the email we sent out today to the shul. But I can, if you'd like to know sort of when those are, then I can help you about that. Failing that, there are other bins. You could put it in a public bin, but it shouldn't be on your bin because that could still be considered to be your property. An electric stove. Do you need to cover any of it? So again, there are some people that sell covers for the in between parts of the stove. Obviously, it's not practical to actually cover, and you shouldn't cover the actual part where the heating element is, where the pot rests. There are some people that sell covers which are sort of silicone heat resistant, specially made covers for the in-between parts, and you can do if you'd like to, but you can buy one of those if you'd like to. Need to. You don't need to, like we said, as long as you turned it on for 10 minutes, then you've kashered it. Our hens eat chametz. Can we just feed them stored outside? The answer is no, you cannot feed them chametz. Pets, feeding pets chametz is a problem, both in terms of owning the chametz and in terms of benefiting from the chametz, because that is considered to be benefit. Giving food to your pet, which is chametz, means you're benefiting from that chametz. The London Basin have an excellent list, a very comprehensive list of foods which you can replace for pets. So have a look. It's kosher.org.uk, I believe, and have a look on their website for a replacement food. They recommend starting it a few days before Pesach to make sure that the animal is okay with it. But they have a lot of alternatives there. And by the way, just on that as well, kidneys would be good. So if it's something like corn, for example, then that would be absolutely fine. You're allowed to own it, and you're allowed to feed it to your animals. Can we wash clothes even if no starch is being used? Not sure I understand what that question is. We can have that question again. Can we go through what we can sell and what we have to actually get rid of completely? Is there a leniency this year in terms of keeping some chametz for after, because it is hard to get food? Right. Okay. Good question. So in terms of selling the chametz, firstly, remember to sell your chametz. This year, it's all been on pretty much. So we're sending out a link. If anyone wants that link, then please contact me or through Seed afterwards, and I will very happily send you that link to sell your chametz. Some people now with that sale of chametz, it is perfectly acceptable to sell any chametz that you have, anything that you own. What is chametz? You can use that form to sell. Make sure that the chametz that you sell is put away. It's got to be put away separate, ideally a separate place in the house. If you've got a room or a loft or a shed or something like that, you can close off. But even if you don't have that, then it should be carefully put away in a cupboard, and that cupboard should be sealed and it should not be accessed on Pesach. So if it can be locked, then lock it. If it's sellotape or notices, sort of thing, something where it's clear that you won't come to use it by accident. Some people don't want to use the sale to sell things which are real chametz, meaning that they'll only sell things which possibly contain chametz, but they don't sell things like actual bread or pretzels or real chametz products. If a person normally that's their practice, then there is definitely more room to be lenient on that. Remember, that is just a stringency, and therefore this year, especially if you're concerned that you won't be able to get food afterwards. I mean, as far as I know, and again, I've spoken to a number of the people that own the kosher shops, no shortage of food. They have reassured me and told me to reassure people that there is no reason to have a shortage of food. But nevertheless, if you are particularly concerned, then remember that is a stringency not to sell sort of real chametz, and therefore you could do that this year and then continue with your normal practice the year after next year. What about glass mugs? So we say glass cannot be kashered for Pesach. So therefore glass mugs will most likely have either been used for hot chametz, or more than likely they will be the glass mugs will have washed up with chametz, the dishwasher, etc. So therefore you should get different glass mugs. You should get Pesach glass mugs specifically for. Let me have a look. What is the reason for no washing clothes during Chol Hamoed? Only allowed to wash items we need for Shabbat. The reason for washing clothes during Chol Hamoed is because, generally speaking, on Chol Hamoed, we're not supposed to do lots of different malachas, lots of different things which are to be like work. There's only a number of reasons why we're allowed to do things. I know often people go to work on Chol Hamoed, but the reason that one is allowed to go to work is only if the financial loss. That's the reason why people can go to work and do various other things. But aside for that, then we're not allowed to wash clothes during Chol Hamoed. Not sure, only allowed to wash items we need for Shabbat. Not sure exactly what that means. If a person has a situation where they literally don't have enough clothes, then they can wash a very small amount that they need for Shabbos or for Yom Tov. Yeah, that's true. Doesn't mention poultry, only birds. It's hard to shop for anything right now. Okay, so get back to me on that. I can try and find out what to do about it. There are lots of Jewish-owned hens. I'm sure there is a solution. Can we eat kitniot on Pesach plates, etc., cleaning or changeover and before Pesach? Okay, very good question. So kitniot should not be eaten on your Pesach plates unless you are Sephardi and you eat kitniot. Don't eat kitniot. If you're Ashkenazi and you don't eat kitniot, then you are not allowed to use your Pesach dishes and crockery and pots and pans and that sort of thing for kitniot, whether it's on Pesach or before Pesach. However, kitniot are useful, especially the snacks which come from Israel, a lot of which do kitniot. They're useful in terms of the fact that you're allowed to own them, and you don't have to worry about cleaning the house again if your kids are running around with them. So what we do, and we did this especially in Israel, there's loads of kitniot snacks that we didn't actually eat ourselves on Pesach, but nevertheless we bought them all and then we used them after for Pesach. Then we gave those kitniot snacks to the kids, and they could run around the house. You don't have to worry about chametz because they're not chametz at all. And even though you use them on Pesach, you're allowed to own them on Pesach. So don't use your Pesach crockery, dishes, etc. For them, but you are allowed to to eat them before Pesach begins. Before Pesach begins. Yeah, another question? Do we have any more questions? Okay, so just to end off, firstly, I'm going to give my number. I'm happy to take more questions as they come up, because I know that often what happens is when you put it all into practice, then suddenly, you know, the questions come up. And I always say to people, that is the best way to learn. That is the best way to learn. When questions come up, Heather's here somewhere. Heather knows, I've told Heather this before. The best way to learn is to ask the questions as they come up. So if you're making Pesach for the first time, this is the way that you're going to learn about how to do it. Send me a message, give me a call. My number is 07341 479 282. 07341 479 282. Use that. I run Seeds Halacha Hotline, and very happy to take any sort of Pesach or otherwise questions that come up. Please do use that number, take it down, and I'm happy to help. Just to end off, we just started the book of Vayikra. The book of Vayikra is all about the offerings that were brought in the temple, that were brought in the Beis Hamikdash. And the Chofetz Chaim, something very interesting. There were only kosher animals which were used for these offerings. Only kosher animals were allowed to be brought as offerings. Now, there are 10 kosher animals in the Torah. Kosher animals are listed in Parashat Shmini. We'll read it in a few weeks' time. Yet, says the Chofetz Chaim, only 3 of them are ever brought as offerings. Out of the 10 kosher animals, only 3 are ever brought as offerings. And the Chofetz Chaim asks, why? Why is this? Why specifically only 3 animals, these 3 which are chosen? And he says the following thing. If you look at the list of animals, the 3 which are chosen are the ones which are very easy to get. A shor, kesev, and an aiz, a sheep, a goat, and a cow. Those are the ones which are offered up, and those are the ones which are very easy to obtain. The other animals are the mountains and the deer, various other animals which are not all easy to identify nowadays, but they are all chayas, they're all wild animals. And those ones, you'd have to run, you'd have to go to the mountains, you'd have to literally chase after them in order to catch them before, if you wanted to actually offer them up. Therefore, he brings a medrash. And the medrash says, I didn't trouble you to run around and to have to chase after these animals in the mountains, valleys, to bring an offering from the things which are not under your control, within your control. I only asked you to bring an offering from those things which are in your control, which are close to hand. So therefore says the Medrash says to us, I want you to bring offerings for me, I want you to serve me, but I'm not going to make it too difficult for you. I'm going to make it manageable. Out of all the 10 possibilities, the 10 animals, you're only going to have to bring offerings from the 3 which are actually closest to hand and easiest to obtain. Says the Chofetz Chaim, you see from here a general principle when it comes to the Torah and the mitzvahs of the Torah. Hashem doesn't ask us to do anything which is beyond our reach. Hashem doesn't ask us to do anything impossible. Hashem doesn't ask us to do anything which is overwhelming. And Pesach is definitely included in that category. So Pesach should be something which is doable. We should feel that it's doable, that it's achievable both this year and every other year. Hashem does not give us a challenge that we cannot overcome. I know that this year is definitely a challenge, generally in many areas and in this area as well, but we can do it. We can rise to the challenge. And please God, we'll look back at this Pesach. We'll have memories of that Pesach that we made, where we made the Seder night by ourselves at home, and we did it together as a family. We put that extra into this Pesach, and please God, it will be a Pesach that we will remember both ourselves and our families for many, many years to come. Please, everyone should be healthy. I'm happy to take a couple more questions privately. I'm going to end the meeting now. For those people that want, and if anyone would like to message me with more questions, then please do. Happy to take more questions. I think I might miss 1 or 2 on the chat as well. Thank you very much for coming and for listening. Take care.
Thank you.
Well.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks,
Pleasure.
Rabbi.
Pleasure.